Have you ever noticed that some of the deepest wounds in life don't come from what actually happened, but from the story we keep telling ourselves about it? Imagine this: a relationship ends, a job slips away, or someone speaks harshly to us. The pain itself is real. Our heart aches, our chest feels heavy, maybe even tears fall. But the suffering that comes when we replay the moment 1,000 times, when we keep asking, why me? Why always me? It's like carrying a stone in your pocket, refusing to let it go, and wondering why you feel so weighed down every single day. Here's a radical truth that shook me when I first encountered it in Buddhist teachings. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. We can't stop life from bringing change, loss, or discomfort. But we can learn to stop adding the extra layers of suffering we create through resistance, clinging, and endless self-talk. And that's what this video is about. Today, I want to share with you 8 simple Buddhist practices, not abstract philosophy, not complicated rituals, but practical steps you can use in your everyday life to release suffering and discover a more peaceful way of being. These practices are not about escaping reality. They're about living more fully within it. They're about noticing what's happening, responding with wisdom, and little by little, loosening the grip of suffering. Think of it as a journey with 3 stages. First, recognition. We begin to see suffering for what it really is. Second, practice. We use tools to meet it differently. And finally, liberation. The moment we realize that what once held us doesn't have to control us anymore. And here's the beautiful part. This path isn't reserved for monks in robes or people sitting on mountaintops. It's for you, for me, for anyone who is simply tired of carrying the weight of unnecessary pain. So, let me ask you something. What if letting go didn't mean losing? What if letting go actually meant gaining freedom, clarity, and even joy? Can you imagine what your life would feel like if you stopped fighting with reality and started flowing with it? Stay with me until the end, because not only will we explore these 8 practices together, but I'll also share a special 7-day challenge, a simple way to test this wisdom in your own life. And as a small gift of gratitude for walking this path with me, you'll also find a free PDF guide linked in the description below. It's designed to support you, to remind you daily of these practices, so you can bring them into your mornings, your work, your relationships, and your quiet moments at night. By the time we finish, you'll see suffering in a completely new light, and maybe, just maybe, you'll realize that you've been holding the key to your own freedom all along. Now, let's begin. Part 1. Recognizing suffering. Let's begin with the very first step, recognizing suffering. And here's the truth, it's not always what we think it is. Pain and suffering are not the same thing. Pain is what happens to us. It's the moment we stub our toe, the heartbreak when someone we love walks away, the sting of losing a job or being misunderstood. Pain is life touching us in ways we cannot always control. But suffering? That's different. Suffering is the story we wrap around the pain. It's the endless replay of the breakup in our mind, whispering, "I'll never be loved again." It's the way we make a single failure mean, "I'm not good enough. I'll always be a failure." Do you see the difference? Pain happens once, but suffering can last for years because we keep feeding it. I'll give you a simple example. Imagine 2 people caught in the same rainstorm. One feels the cold drops and says, "This is miserable, my whole day is ruined." The other feels the exact same drops and says, "Ah, refreshing. Nature is reminding me I'm alive." The rain is the same. The pain of getting wet is the same. But the story? Completely different. One carries suffering, the other carries freedom. And here's the invitation. The next time you feel that knot of tension in your chest or that weight in your heart, pause for 60 seconds. Ask yourself two questions. What exactly is happening right now? And what story am I adding on top of it? That pause, that moment of honest self-inquiry, can be the doorway to freedom. Because when we separate the event from the narrative, the pain from the suffering, suddenly we begin to see most of what is hurting us is not reality itself, but our resistance to it. I'll be honest with you. I've lived entire months trapped in suffering without realizing it, holding on to grudges, replaying conversations, convincing myself life was unfair. And yet, the more I practiced asking those two questions, the more I noticed the raw pain was often much smaller than the endless drama my mind kept producing. Maybe you felt that too. If so, I'd love for you to share it in the comments. Sometimes just writing it down is the first step of letting go. Here's why this matters. If we can't recognize suffering, we can't transform it. We'll keep thinking that life itself is unbearable, when in fact, it's the way we cling to our version of the story that makes it so heavy. Recognition is like turning on the light in a dark room. It doesn't remove the furniture, but it helps us stop bumping into it. And this is where the Buddhist wisdom guides us to the next step. Once we've seen the difference between pain and suffering, the natural question arises: if suffering is created in the mind, can it also dissolve in the mind? The answer is yes. And the doorway to dissolving it lies in understanding one of the most profound truths the Buddha ever taught: impermanence. Everything changes. Every feeling, every thought, every storm, even the deepest grief, it all moves. So let's take this recognition of suffering and walk together into the next insight: impermanence. Because the moment we see that nothing stays, we begin to loosen our grip, and the process of letting go truly begins. Part 2. Impermanence. Anicca. Here's the next doorway on this journey. Impermanence, or as the Buddha called it, anicca. Mini hook. Have you ever tried to hold on to a moment, only to feel it slipping through your fingers like sand? We've all been there. That perfect evening with someone you love, wishing it could last forever. Or the painful night when your heart is breaking, praying it would end immediately. Both moments, beautiful or painful, are temporary. And yet, here's the paradox. We spend so much of our energy either clinging to what we want to keep or resisting what we want to push away. That very clinging and resisting is what creates suffering. Think about it. You look in the mirror and notice another wrinkle, another gray hair. The mind says, I'm losing my youth, I'm losing myself. Or maybe you've had a success at work and you think this feeling must last forever. But eventually, the applause fades. The promotion becomes normal, and you start chasing the next thing. The truth is, nothing stays the same. The seasons don't, our bodies don't, even our emotions don't. Every joy, every sorrow, every breath, it all moves. And here's the practice. When you feel overwhelmed, stop and take 5 slow breaths. With each inhale and exhale, repeat silently to yourself, this too is changing. Notice how even in 1 minute, your breath changes, your heartbeat shifts, your thoughts come and go. Imagine your emotions like clouds drifting across the sky. They form, they stay for a while, and then they dissolve. No storm has ever lasted forever. I'll share something personal. There was a time in my life when grief felt like it would never end. Each morning, I woke up with the same heavy chest, the same empty feeling. But slowly, through practice, I began to notice tiny shifts. One day, a small laugh slipped out. Another day, the sun looked a little brighter. Impermanence didn't erase the pain, but it reminded me that nothing, no matter how dark, stays forever. That gave me hope. Maybe you've had that moment too, where you realized that what once felt unbearable eventually softened. Let me ask you, What in your life right now feels permanent? A stress, a loss, maybe even a fear? What if you whispered to yourself, "This too is changing"? Would it loosen its grip on you? If you feel called, share just one word in the comments, something you're learning to see as temporary. Sometimes that small act of naming it can begin the release. And here's why this matters. When we truly understand impermanence, our attachments begin to soften. We no longer need to hold everything so tightly because we know we can't make it stay. We no longer need to push things away with so much anger because we know they won't last either. Impermanence is not here to scare us. It's here to free us. And once we begin to loosen our grip on the changing world around us, something beautiful happens inside. The idea of me and mine also starts to soften. If everything is changing, then the self we cling to, the fixed identity we defend, must also be changing. Which brings us to the next profound truth. Anatta, the teaching of not self. Part 3. Not self. What if I told you that most of your stress, your anger, even your heartbreak, comes from defending something that doesn't actually exist the way you think it does? This is where we step into one of the most liberating but also most challenging truths in Buddhism. Anatta, the teaching of not self. Now, don't worry, I'm not saying you don't exist. Of course you do. You feel, you breathe, you live. But the self we defend so fiercely, the me, who must always be right, the me who must look perfect, the me who must not fail, that self is more like a story than a solid thing. And when we hold on too tightly to that story, life feels heavier than it needs to. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine someone cuts you off in traffic. The event lasts 3 seconds. But your mind says, "How dare they? They disrespected me. People always take advantage of me." And suddenly, the self has entered the stage, angry, defensive, needing to protect its identity. The suffering isn't in the 3 seconds of being cut off. It's in the 10 minutes, sometimes hours of replaying it, all because of me. Here's the practice I use, and you can try it too. The next time you feel tension rise, maybe during an argument, maybe when someone criticizes you, pause and simply label it selfing. That's it. Notice that the mind is creating a strong sense of I, me, mine, and then quietly whisper inside, not me, not mine. The situation is still there, yes, but you are no longer chained to it. That small gap is freedom. I'll be honest, when I first tried this, it felt strange, almost like I was letting go of myself. But over time, I realized I wasn't losing anything. I was simply dropping the armor I didn't need. The funny thing is, when you loosen the grip of the ego, you actually feel lighter, more open, more human. You stop needing to prove yourself all the time. And the relationships around you start to soften too, because people feel less of that sharp edge of defensiveness. Let me ask you this. Can you think of one moment this week where the self got in the way? Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was fear of being wrong. Maybe it was the need to control. If something comes to mind, write just the letter S in the comments. It's a simple way of saying, yes, I see my selfing. And trust me, you're not alone. We all do it. The beauty of anatta is that it doesn't erase who you are. It reveals that you are more than the labels, more than the roles, more than the thoughts that pass through. You are not only the story of me, you are awareness itself. You are the space in which all of this arises and falls away. And once the ego begins to soften, something incredible opens up. We find space real, breathing space to simply be. That's why the natural next step in this journey is to return to the most basic, the most intimate practice of all, the breath. Because when the I loosens, the breath becomes a doorway into peace. And that is where we'll go next. Part 4. Mindful Breathing. Anapanasati. You know, sometimes the simplest things are the hardest to remember. Breathing. Something we've done since the very first moment of our life, yet we rarely give it the attention it deserves. But in Buddhism, mindful breathing, anapanasati, is not just about air going in and out. It is the anchor that brings us back home to ourselves, the key that unlocks peace in the middle of chaos. Let me ask you something. Have you ever caught yourself rushing through the day, moving from one task to the next without even realizing how tense your shoulders are or how heavy your mind feels? It's like living on autopilot. And here's the truth. Suffering often hides in those unnoticed moments. But the breath is always there, waiting to guide us back. There's a simple practice I love to share. I call it the 3-breath reset. Just 3 conscious breaths. On the first breath, feel your body. Notice the weight of your feet on the ground, the rise and fall of your chest. On the second breath, feel your emotions. Maybe it's stress, maybe it's joy, maybe it's numbness. Whatever it is, just let it be there without judgment. And on the third breath, smile gently and let go. Release the need to control. Release the heaviness. 3 breaths, and suddenly you're back in the present. It sounds simple, but sometimes simple is exactly what we need. What I love about this practice is that it doesn't require a meditation cushion, a quiet room, or hours of free time. You can do it while standing in line at the grocery store, while waiting at a red light, or even before answering a difficult email. It's like carrying a little sanctuary inside your own chest. And that's powerful, because liberation doesn't have to wait for the perfect moment. It begins right here, in the breath you're taking now. When I first practiced mindful breathing, I remember how restless my mind was. I thought, this is too simple, it can't possibly work. But then, slowly, I noticed the shifts. Instead of reacting immediately to anger or anxiety, I could pause. Just that pause, just that space, created by a single breath, changed everything. It was no longer about suppressing emotions or running from them, but about holding them gently, like you'd hold a fragile bird. Have you ever tried that? Just observing your feelings, without trying to fix them, it's surprisingly freeing. And this is the transition. Once we are anchored in the breath, we can begin to observe our feelings, our sensations, without being enslaved by them. Imagine standing in the middle of a storm, but realizing you are not the storm. You are the calm sky above it. The breath teaches us this truth again and again. So here's a little experiment for you. The next time you feel overwhelmed, stop and try the 3-breath reset. 1 for the body, 1 for the emotions, 1 for letting go. And then ask yourself, how do I feel now compared to a moment ago? You might be surprised at how quickly suffering begins to loosen its grip. If this resonates with you, I'd love to hear, would you try the 3-breath reset today? Maybe just type the number 3 in the comments as a little reminder for yourself and for others who might need it. Who knows, your comment might inspire someone else to take their very first mindful breath. Part 5. Observing feelings without reacting. Have you ever noticed how quickly a feeling can take over your entire mind? One small irritation, and suddenly the whole day feels ruined. Or a craving appears, and before we even realize it, we've already given in. But here's the surprising truth. Feelings are not commands. They rise, they fade, and if we learn to watch them carefully, we no longer have to be their prisoner. Storytelling. Enter the practice. I remember the first time I tried this in my own life. I was stuck in traffic, someone cut me off, and I could feel the wave of anger rushing through my body. Usually, I would clench the steering wheel, shout, or replay the scene over and over in my head. But this time, I just paused. I thought, what if I don't react? I took a slow breath. I noticed the heat in my chest, the tightness in my jaw, the pounding in my heart, and then it shifted. The anger wasn't permanent. It was just an energy, rising and falling. The teaching. Feelings are not orders. In Buddhism, this is called Vedana, the raw sensations and feelings that arise in every moment. The problem is not the feeling itself, but how quickly we obey it. A craving says, "Eat that cookie now." An irritation says, "Yell back, prove your point." And we follow, like soldiers obeying orders. But what if we realize that feelings are just visitors? They don't own us. They don't dictate our next step. They come, they go. Practical tool number 1, the 90-second body scan. One of the most powerful practices is incredibly simple, a short body scan. Set aside just 90 seconds. Close your eyes and notice what's happening in your body. Tightness, tingling, warmth, restlessness. Don't label it as good or bad. Just observe. You'll see how sensations shift, almost like clouds moving across the sky. And in that shift, you realize, this is not permanent. I don't have to obey it. Practical tool number 2, urge surfing. Another technique I love is called urge surfing. Think about the last time you had a craving, maybe for sugar, for scrolling endlessly on your phone, or even for snapping back at someone who upset you. Instead of fighting it or giving in immediately, try this. Ride the wave. Notice the craving as it rises, peaks, and then falls away. It usually lasts only 10 to 30 seconds. You don't have to do anything. You just breathe, watch, and let the wave pass. And when it does, you discover a freedom you never thought you had the freedom to choose instead of react. Personal reflection. For me, this practice has been life-changing. It doesn't mean I never get angry or never crave chocolate. Of course I do. I'm human, just like you. But now, there's a space between the feeling and the action. And in that space, there is freedom. Freedom to stay calm, to smile instead of snap, to walk away instead of argue. Honestly, sometimes that small pause has saved my relationships and even saved me from hurting myself with stress. I wonder what feeling shows up most often for you. Is it anger, craving, fear, maybe loneliness? If you had to give it a name, what would it be? Share with me in the comments, just one word, or even just the first letter. For me, it's often A for anger. What about you? And here's the beauty. Once we see that feelings are not commands, we can soften. Instead of fighting every wave, we can meet them with gentleness. And when we soften toward our own inner storms, something unexpected happens. We naturally become more compassionate toward others. Because if my anger is just a wave, then so is yours. And instead of judgment, I can meet you with understanding. Part 6. Loving kindness for yourself. Metta. Have you ever noticed how harsh we can be with ourselves? Sometimes, the words we say in our own mind are sharper than anything anyone else could ever throw at us. We trip, we fail, or we simply fall short of our own expectations. And instantly, that inner voice attacks. You're not good enough. You'll never get it right. But let me ask you this. If a dear friend came to you, hurting and broken, would you speak to them that way? Of course not. You would soften. You would offer kindness. So why do we think we don't deserve the same warmth from ourselves? This is where the Buddhist practice of metta, or loving kindness, becomes such a powerful medicine for suffering. Metta isn't about forcing positivity or pretending that pain doesn't exist. It's about replacing the habit of self-criticism with a gentle embrace, a reminder that even in our flaws, we are worthy of compassion. Here's a simple way to begin. It only takes a breath. Close your eyes, and with every inhale and exhale, Repeat quietly in your heart. May I be safe. May I be peaceful. May I be healthy. May I be free. 4 short lines. That's all. Yet when practiced with sincerity, they can transform the way you relate to yourself. Imagine carrying these words like a soft blanket, wrapping around your wounds instead of poking at them. The more you repeat them, the more you create new grooves in your mind pathways of care instead of criticism. And I'll be honest with you, the first time I tried this, it felt strange, almost awkward. My mind kept resisting. This is silly. You don't deserve this. But that resistance itself was the proof of how deeply I had been conditioned to be unkind to myself. Over time, the words started to sink in, not as empty affirmations, but as seeds of truth. Seeds that eventually grew into a new way of living, with more patience, more gentleness, and a surprising sense of inner safety. Think about it. When we treat ourselves with compassion, something begins to shift. The chains of guilt and shame start to loosen, the endless striving softens, and life itself feels a little lighter. It's like placing down a heavy backpack you didn't even realize you were carrying. Now, I want to invite you to reflect. When was the last time you spoke to yourself with real kindness? Not achievement-based kindness. I did well so I can feel good about myself, but unconditional kindness, the kind you would offer a child or someone you deeply love. If you're willing, share it in the comments with just one word that describes how that moment felt. Maybe it's light, or safe, or simply peace. Let's see what words rise up from our shared experience. And here's the deeper truth. The less we cling to the harsh judgments we place on ourselves, the easier it becomes to let go in other areas of life. Loving kindness isn't just a practice of healing. It's a practice of freedom. Every time we say those 4 lines, we loosen the grip of suffering, and we open the door a little wider to peace. So tonight, before you sleep, try it. Just 4 breaths, 4 sentences, and notice what happens. Sometimes the greatest liberation begins with the smallest, gentlest act, learning to finally be a friend to yourself. Part 7. Letting go of clinging through the practice of giving. Donna, have you ever noticed how tightly we hold on to things, whether it's possessions, relationships, or even our own opinions? We grip them so hard, as if letting go would mean losing a part of who we are. But here's the paradox. The more we cling, the heavier life feels. The Buddha called this upadana clinging, attachment. And he also gave us a way to loosen that grip, the practice of dana, or generosity. Now, generosity isn't only about money or material gifts. It's about the willingness to release. To say, I don't need to own this in order to feel complete. One simple way you can practice this is something I like to call the 1 in, 1 out rule. Every time something new enters your life, a shirt, a book, a gadget, you choose one item to give away. It sounds small, but when you actually do it, you'll notice the subtle shift. Suddenly, your home feels lighter. But even more than that, your heart feels lighter. And here's a little challenge that might surprise you. Try giving something that isn't material at all, your time, your presence, your attention. In a world where everyone is rushing, constantly distracted, offering someone a full hour of undivided listening is one of the rarest gifts. Imagine sitting with a friend, putting away your phone, and simply being there. No advice, no judgment, just listening. That 1 hour might heal something in them, and in you, too. I remember the first time I tried this. I sat with a friend who was going through a painful breakup. Normally, I would jump in with suggestions, solutions, maybe even distractions. But instead, I just listened. At the end, she didn't say, "Thank you for fixing my problem." She said, "Thank you for letting me be heard." That moment taught me that generosity isn't about what you give, but about what you're willing to release your urge to control, to fix, to cling. And this is where the real freedom begins, because every act of generosity loosens the knot of attachment. Every time we give, we're telling ourselves, "I don't need to hold so tightly." And when we live this way, when we bring awareness to our daily acts of giving, something extraordinary happens. Even simple habits, like sharing a meal, offering a smile to a stranger, or letting someone else take the last piece of cake, become spiritual practice. Giving transforms from an obligation into liberation. So, let me ask you this. What's harder for you to give? Things, time, or attention? Drop a quick comment below with just one word: things, time, or attention. I'd love to know, because for most of us, the answer reveals where we're clinging the most. And here's the beauty: you don't have to wait for the perfect moment to begin. You can start right now, today. When you bring generosity into each small corner of your life, you start to see that letting go isn't about loss. It's about making space. Space for peace, space for joy, space for freedom. 8. Living by the Noble Eightfold Path. You know, many of us want a life that feels lighter, more peaceful, more meaningful. But the truth is, peace doesn't come from running away from suffering. It comes from having a clear way to live each day. And in Buddhism, that operating system for a life free from unnecessary suffering is called the Noble Eightfold Path. Think of it like a gentle compass, always pointing you back toward balance. Let's break it down in a very simple way. Because when we hear Eightfold Path, it might sound complicated, or like something monks practice in the mountains. But it's actually very practical. It starts with right view, learning to see life as it really is, not through the lens of fear, anger, or desire. When you shift your view, your whole world shifts. Then comes right intention, right speech, and right action. These aren't just rules. They're reminders that every thought, every word, and every action plants a seed in our life. Here's a simple practice I love to use, something I call the Rule of 3 daily. Each day, just set one good intention, speak one kind word, and do one small good action. That's it. Then, before you go to bed, take 2 minutes to reflect. Did I live with awareness today? Did I choose peace instead of reaction? This sounds simple, but try it for a week. You'll notice your mind feels lighter. You'll notice less regret at night. And you'll see that peace isn't something far away. It's something you create, moment by moment. I remember once, a friend of mine was struggling with his temper. He'd always snap at his kids after work. I suggested he try the Rule of 3 daily. One night, instead of yelling, he paused and said one kind word to his daughter. She smiled. That small moment changed everything. The next morning, he told me, "I feel like I'm rewriting my life one word at a time." That's the power of living the path. It's not about being perfect. It's about choosing again and again. Now, I'd love to ask you, if you were to try the Rule of 3 today, one intention, one kind word, one kind action, what would yours be? Write it in the comments, even if it's just a single word like patience or kindness. You never know who might be inspired by your answer. So when we look back, the journey is clear. First, we recognize our suffering. Then, we practice new ways of living. And finally, we experience freedom. That's the path the Buddha left for us, not something heavy or complicated, but a daily rhythm of awareness and compassion. And each small step on that path is already liberation. Payoff ending. You know, as we come to the close of this journey together, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've uncovered. 8 simple yet profound practices, like little stepping stones across a river, each one guiding us from the weight of suffering to the freedom of peace. We began by simply seeing suffering as it is, without running, without denying. Because once you can name your pain, you no longer have to be ruled by it. Then we remembered the truth of impermanence and no-self, realizing that nothing we cling to will ever stay the same, and in that truth, a great freedom opens up. We practiced coming home to the breath, the most ordinary yet sacred anchor we carry everywhere. We turned toward our feelings, not to drown in them, but to listen, to understand what they're trying to tell us. And we discovered compassion not only as a gift to others, but as the medicine we ourselves need most. We explored the joy of giving, the kind of generosity that doesn't measure or expect, but simply flows from the heart. And finally, we placed all of these pieces into the larger frame of the Noble Eightfold Path, a compass for living with clarity, kindness, and wisdom every single day. Each of these practices might seem small, even ordinary, but when woven together, they form a tapestry that can truly transform how we experience life. So here's my invitation to you. For the next 7 days, try a little experiment with me. I call it the 3-breath reset plus 1 act of kindness. Whenever you feel stressed, lost, or overwhelmed, pause just for 3 slow breaths. Let yourself arrive in this very moment. Then, each day, choose 1 simple act of kindness. It doesn't have to be big. A smile, a message of encouragement, helping someone without expecting anything back. At the end of each day, write down how you felt. You may be surprised by how even the smallest shift changes your entire experience of life. And if you'd like a little support on this path, I've prepared a free PDF checklist as a gentle companion for your journey. To receive it, just leave a comment below with number "Let Go." Think of it as a way of saying to yourself, "Yes, I'm ready to step into this practice." Now, I want to ask you something personal. Is there someone in your life, maybe a loved one, maybe even yourself, who seems weighed down by stress, by fear, by holding on too tightly? If a face or a name has just come to your mind, consider sharing this video with them. It might be the reminder they need today. And if this message has touched you, if you feel a spark of peace or clarity, I'd love for you to join this community. Subscribe so we can continue walking this path together. Because the next video we'll explore might be one of the deepest questions in Buddhism. If there is no self, then who is it that becomes free? That question alone has the power to shift the way you see everything. Remember, my friend, letting go is not about losing. It's about returning. Returning to yourself, to freedom, to the quiet joy that's always been here waiting. So take a breath with me right now. And as we let this video come to a close, may you carry with you the courage to soften, the wisdom to see clearly, and the heart to let go. I'm grateful you've been here with me. And until next time, be gentle with yourself and walk with peace.